last year, Fred was pretty central to what I might call my artistic development or my brain thinkings, because I'm not a sound artist, I'm not a musician. I do have a musical family, my mum's very musical, but I've never done anything with that. But I am a photographer and I do work with light and composition of images. And what I found really useful was listening to people who were talking about sound and the composition of tunes, and then taking that quite left field often train of thought and trying to apply it to light and how I thought about the camera. And this is sort of the culmination of that in a way, which is why I wanted to premiere it here, or at least talk about it here. Probably best just dive straight in. Initially I'm going to talk about 10 minutes about how I got to this point, and then I'm going to do the demonstration. When I do the demonstration, some of you might want to come forward and actually have a look around at the stuff to make a bit more sense. This is fundamentally about sonification of images, or turning photos into sounds, and seeing what pictures sound like. It's not a particularly strange idea, but it's something that's where I'm going through. One thing I got really interested in, photography-wise, before all this, was something called slit scan photography. Has anybody heard of that concept? Few of you have. Basically, this is a slit scan photo, and you take a picture. It's basically a series of pictures that are all 1 pixel thin, and then the camera moves along, takes a strip of pixels at a time, and builds up this photo over time. So this is one scene that has been stacked along like that. And this is the one where you've just got a still slit, and then you record what passes in front of that slit. So it's people walking along the pavement, and as they walk by, they register on the slit, which are all stacked. So what we have here is time, moving through time, a record of what's passed in front of that very, very thin camera for that moment, for that second, split second. And I think that's similar to a musical score. You have a stave with notes, then you move along the stave, and the notes get triggered, or sounds get triggered as you move along. I think that's a reasonable thing. So if we think of this as a score, moving through time, you've got a pretty standard lines, and then these blips where people come in. You could maybe think of those as triggering sounds. Now, this is not a new idea. This is something called an ANS synthesizer, named after a Russian whose initials are ANS, so I can't pronounce his name. And it was built in the, I think, 1920s or so, based on earlier theories. It came into popular use when Tarkovsky used it, or the composer for Tarkovsky used Solaris and Stalker, and various other movies used this to create the soundtrack. He didn't want a musical soundtrack, he wanted this kind of mechanical, strange sort of sound. What happens is you draw on this plate here, I believe, sort of figured out just by looking at pictures, you draw lines and then they are scanned. So it's very much like we can scan a picture now, or flatbed scanner. The image goes across, and where there's scratches, where light can pass through, it triggers photosensitive electron keys, which may sound and this is, while I was researching this, I discovered that the band Coil, or the collective Coil, whatever Coil consider themselves to be, the experimental sound artist Coil, went to Russia in 2003, I think, and recorded an album called ANS, which is based on these images that they fed into this machine. And they should sound a bit like this. I need some sound. Sorry. It's not ready. We should have some sound. Think intersecting, and so on and so forth. I've dabbled with this myself. I'll show you the device that I use shortly. I had a little project where I took a bunch of selfies of Instagram and I tried to see what they sounded like. And what I did was I first of all stick scanned them. So I scanned across there, took out a single pixel, stretched them out, and made them into the background. And this is what it looks like, but also what it sounds like. This is before they became annoyingly picked up by arseholes. They were quite fascinating because there's another whole thing. I'm interested in ubiquitous photography and camera phones and how photography used to be quite an elitist pursuit and now it's a very democratic is the wrong word, but ubiquitous. Nearly everybody has a camera in their pockets, and that's fascinating to me in the same sense that fanzines are fascinating, blogging is fascinating. Anything that everyone has access to is always of interest. So selfies were this thing of the unmediated photograph, the unmediated portrait. You don't have, when someone takes a picture of you, you're on guard and you're not in control of that. Result, when you take a selfie, you're in complete control of that. Unfortunately, they got picked up by marketing people in the end job. Now it's tediously less interesting. But I've been collecting selfies for about a year and a bit. I've got about 200,000 of them now. Various forms. But that's not what we're talking about. So, moving on. This is a version of the ANS synth, which you can download. It's available for Mac, PC, Linux. It's also on all on Android and iOS platforms, and you can load images into it and see what they sound like. So this is me playing Coil. Speed that up a bit. Quite a crude image, so the pixels are quite jumpy. If you had a high definition image, it would be a lot smoother. And you can also do your own. You've got a blank screen, you can draw a line like that. Put in some things like so. Very crude. Now, see what that sounds like. And so that's the foundation of this technology. To me, these aren't. This isn't a score as such. This is an image. This is this is basically a photograph. I mean, photograph is collection of light and dark areas, collection of pixels, however you like to think of it. So I'm interested in what happens if I put photographs into this, which is what you saw with the receptors. Now that's very nice, but I'm also kind of interested in photography as a performance. This is something I've been, again, this comes back to the wet stuff. All the musicians and the sound artists, they stand up here and they make sounds and people watch them making sounds. You never watch a photographer making pictures. You don't play this when you play a guitar. And you can do the pose, this kind of thing, but that's not really, that's just, you know, dancing around really. It's not anything to do with the actual photograph. So I'm wondering, I've been sort of picking at this, and I think the answer is probably no, but the question is, can you be a performance photographer? So I've set up a little system here where hopefully I can. And that's why I do this. So David, can I borrow you a picture? Okay, so I've got a picture of David. Now, hopefully, it should send itself to get a sound here. Ooh, no. These are all the photos I've building. There it is.
Excellent.
Some of which,
all of which are in your group.
You've probably seen this. If you do a panorama, you can wrap the panorama into like a globe, so it looks like a little planet with trees going around it. So I've done a similar thing here with
That's really cool.
and various things, because you don't know which one's going to be useful. Negatives sometimes are more useful than positives. But I think we'll go with that one. That makes one really. Wow. So we'll take that picture and we'll take it to a record. While it's doing that, I'll take some pictures of something else. Your beard is going to be very Thank you very much.
Bloody hairy people.
Cool.
Glad they shaved.
So now we've got the record. This is the bit where some of you at the back might want to come forward, maybe. Now this is this is out from the same guys who did the OS6 paper, and it effectively takes a slit scan. If you want to move to the panoramic page, you can change the do that. Smile. This way you say,
Wow.
Turntables from Street Cycle and eBay. The only reason I chose turntables was because it's cheaper than building motors. I like using redundant technology. So I think it's the glasses that make it. Purely just by twiddling these things on here. That's to say, not musician. This is where it all kind of falls down for me because I don't know what the hell I'm doing at this stage. I'm quite comfortable wielding one of these. I'm not at all comfortable making sounds that people want to listen to, which I know isn't necessarily a requirement for IFWEC. But so I guess the point of this in some ways is to look for collaborators, look for somebody who's interested in taking over this bit. I should also say my long-term plan for this isn't to use apps on iPads because it's quite expensive if you want to expand it out. I'm looking into, my plan is to build a little Arduino thing with a camera attachment that I can then program to do what I want it to do, hopefully with a little dial that will change the pitch. Because these are quite, as you can tell, they pretty much sound the same. And sonification apps tend to be quite rigid. A lot of them seem to work off colour, which is great, but I'm not interested in colour in this situation. Unless someone's got a colour laser printer. Is there anything else I want to talk about? No, I think I'll probably stop talking at that stage. And thank you very much. But if anybody wants to have a quick play with this for 5 minutes, please do, and I'll carry on taking some pictures maybe, or we can draw it to a line.
Well, let's see if everyone goes back to this, you can see if there's any questions.
Yes, let's do that.
questions for Pete Ashton.
What's really nice is all these months of tweets and requesting things. And has anybody got this? Has anybody got that? I can see why. So that's really nice to see.
You said about collaborating with people. Kind of what kind of stuff do you want to collaborate with? What's your idea with?
I think the collaboration is to turn it into some sort of performance. I mean, I'm a big fan of the Supersonic Festival and been going to that for since 2006, I think. And so I've seen things up there where they've got this stuff, and I'd like to do that. I'd like to turn it into something where it has this performance aspect. This has been very talky, but I can see it working in where there's the photographer who's... I've also been a pit photographer, so I want to try and make a relationship between photographing an event and the event itself, or the performance itself. There's something about that thing that interests me. How can the photographer affect the performance? So it's something about having the photographer on stage making photographs, which in and of themselves have value as photographs, but then those photographs creating or informing the event itself. That's, I suppose, the big tent idea. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be print out on turntables. It could be, I mean, it wouldn't be too hard to just get that to animate on a screen and just point out, or just even have that turn into sound. But the thing about this is, you say, you can do that switchy, scratchy thing, and it's like... So.
It's also the visual aspect as well.
Yes, and
because anybody can have a Mac box up on all you see is the apple at the back and you don't see anything else that does.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that's come up here before. Sarah
Angus.
Sarah Angus. Yes, Sarah. They're talking about, you can't just sit behind a laptop, you've got to have something that... That's it. Which is sort of ironic, because then we get back to the guitar thing. You don't need to do this, but...
Yeah, but the rushing around with scissors and cutting... So
yeah,
it's a piece of paper off as you're around.
Yeah, and that's
lunging with the camera.
I wonder whether the most practical application for it is to play it like a DJ set after the band you've just taken photos of.
Yeah.
Run them straight off and then if it's a play set, while the stage is getting set up again, you play it to the side of what you've done.
And to be fair, something like Supersonic, it's just a sound source that if you work with the right person with a chain of effects that turns it into... It's just a rotating sound source then in a way, which is...
Yeah, I was looking into getting effects from these boxes to read it through.
Don't go down the whole route.
Yeah, it was like I had to learn a whole thing. I don't think I need to. But something that you just modulate it and turn it into something different, something more, something less like a sonic round. It does sound like a sonic round.
Any more questions? Yes?
Not really a question, I was just thinking as you were
No, please.
I would think what would be great is something that they've interacted with you, and then that makes you think about some kind of dance curriculum, where they're dancing to the music that's playing, but you're taking the photo that was changing the music, so it's kind of very...
Yeah. I've seen something vaguely similar where I'm used to music, but it's where the dance, the video of the dancer, which is then modulated. So if they do that quick movement makes their arm stretch, or if they move very slowly, then their body shrinks, that kind of thing. And that wouldn't be too hard to turn into sound. So you actually, and I think that's quite, I've seen that a few times, where people, basically sort of Kinect style, playing music, where your movement is tracked in that sense.
I think I very much like the fact that you've got, well, I mean, it's not dissimilar to the sort of stuff that Graham Dunning does in some ways. I mean, when Graham came here to do a Lift Wet, actually when he did the Supersonic one, the thing that was fascinating when he did the Supersonic Lift Wet was that he had locked record players. So he was using one, which is something you would do of course with this, he was using one record player to drive all of multiple stacked layers of a kind of machine that could then make techno, but all locked to one motor. So at the moment, you've got three motors which, by their nature, are not, well, they're probably quartz locked, maybe, I don't know. But they'll be close to in time, but will be shifting out time, which is a nice thing in its own right. But if you wanted to make it so that it had locked rhythmical elements, for example, across all of the different sounds that you bring in, and you could extend upwards, which could be fun. And it looks ridiculous.
Well, this is... Oh, crumbs, I didn't switch it on.
You didn't switch it light on.
Sorry.
It's Christmas.
No, we have to go back and do it all again properly.
Winter commentary, especially these are IKEA lights.
It's all that.
I don't know, it's IKEA lights. I can't remember what I was going to say.
That's very good.
If you're interested in collaborating, do you know Steve Simmons, who wrote the album?
No.
He teaches creative media at Worcester. This is the sort of thing that he's been doing. He's on the mark.
Did you tell me that when I'm not standing with you?
Yeah.
Thank you. That sounds really interesting.
He's somebody who's good at this. Yeah, I'm working with him on something next month, which is not similar to this, but he uses that agreement for trying to fuse something out into sound.
Anyone else? Anyone fancy a go? Or yeah, come and have a go. Or we'll leave a go till the end. Is that okay with you?
Yeah. If you don't mind, we'll go on to shift it out of the way.
Cool. Yeah, we don't need to move much.
No.
Cool.
Right, thank you very, very much.
Very good. So I have no idea what time it is because that